You're listening to the Donnerstag family of Woodboro, a special edition of If These Woods Could Talk, produced by the Rhinelander District Library. Today, as last week, I'm happy to be joined by three persons about town: Anita Tyler, Dan Hagan, and Lily Alstein. Thanks again for being here, you all.
Good to be here.
Thanks for having us.
So for a quick refresher, anyone want to help me go over quickly what we discussed last week?
Yeah, let me take a stab at it. Well, we read part of the New North newspaper, which is very ominous, regarding a Thomas Donnerstag who shot himself. However, Matt tells us that that didn't happen at all. So there's a lot of missing information there. So we will, I'm sure, clear that up today. But we learned about, or another episode, but we learned about Rudolf and Johanna Donnerstag, who are from Germany, and they ended up making the trek over to Wisconsin by boat and another boat, and they brought with them two of their children, and they had five more while in Wisconsin. And then you kind of left off with an encounter with their neighbor in Tomahawk, so that's where we are now. How'd I do?
I think you nailed it.
Sweet.
So we're going to start off back in Tomahawk when they first moved there and at the first inklings of troubles with the neighbor. So thank you for that. Let's get into the Donnerstag family of Woodboro, Chapter 2, Thursdays at Tomahawk. This is the story of Sherman Merritt. Sherman A. Merritt was born in early 1860 in the town of Scott in Columbia County, Wisconsin, near the border with Green Lake County. He spent some time in Fairmont, Minnesota as a boy, and in 1890 married Olive May Wallace in Barron County, Wisconsin. He's listed at the time as a railway employee. In 1892, he was living on Somo Avenue in Tomahawk and working as a railroad engineer. One day, a new family moved in across Somo from him. Their name was Donnerstag, he was told, and all he knew besides that was that he didn't like them. Not long after they moved in, something happened to vindicate Merritt's prejudice. According to court testimony, the younger Donnerstags crossed the road to throw stones at Merritt's house. It seems like the kids were called home for supper, and Merritt had lost his temper. He laced up his shoes and stomped across the street. The following account is from eldest Donnerstag daughter Hannah on the witness stand.
My brother and father, they were just coming back from work, and they took off their stockings, and they were going to eat their supper, and Mr. Merritt came and rapped with his fist on the door. And then my father says, "Who's there?" Then he said, "Come out, you Dutch son of a bitch." Then my pa come out, and then he grabbed my pa and hit my pa. He hit him 7 times.
6 or 7 times?
Yes, sir. Then my brother came out, then he struck my brother, then they put him out of the gate. Then he says, "I'll fix you sons of bitches some other time," when he was out of the gate.
You saw this for yourself?
Yes.
Merritt was tossed from the Donnerstag's yard. He picked up his hat and walked home, but he held on to his anger as Lewis held on to his. If these woods could talk, they might tell you about grudges and blood in the streets. Things between Merritt and Donnerstag simmered. Neighbors were aware of bad blood between the two men. Still, it seems that nothing else transpired between them for about 3 years. In that time, the Donnerstags left their property and moved a bit north of Tomahawk to an abandoned logging camp on the southern shore of Manson Lake in Woodboro. Do we know where Manson is?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, as a quick aside, I've spent a good bit of time looking for the source of the name of Manson, the town and the lake, with no real success. Best guess is related to Rufus P. Manson, whose logging company was based out of Marathon County, but there's really no concrete connections. Yeah, Manson was a town right over there, kind of, you know where the boat landing is on 8 for Manson? Like, basically across the highway there is where Manson was centered, and it used to appear on maps, like as late as 1939.
Is the boat landing on 8 go to Crescent? Is there a Manson?
There's, well, not boat landing is the wrong thing, but it is a public access to the, you can get in there. There's a pier that, well, I've used it. I think it's public. Okay, good. All right. Yeah, as I mentioned before, this is something of a trend studying historical events that are not notable culture-wide. There's just a lot of questions whose answers are completely lost. Uh, Another answer I'll never get: what the Manson property looked like. There's a vague description of where buildings and fields were, and I know which lots they lived on and eventually came to own. I wish I could someday learn the condition of the house or what it looked like, how many rooms there were, if they built it, or if it was just a logging shanty converted to fit the needs of a family of 9. But that's neither here nor there. It is supposed to be just a logging shanty that they kind of squatted in. That was abandoned after a camp moved on. So I mean, I've been to Pioneer Park. Well, anyway, I don't know what it looks like.
Probably nothing spectacular.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. Although later there is mention of an upstairs, so I don't know if they built on or.
Like some sort of loft or something.
Yeah, sure. But by 1895, the Donnerstags were primarily living at the Manson property and once again began to rent the house in Tomahawk, the same one across the road from Sherman Merritt. They did whatever they could for subsistence and money, and a big part of their work was fishing on Manson. Every Thursday, they'd fill a wagon with minimal provisions and a haul of fish and ride down to Tomahawk. There, Lewis would sell the fish to shops, inns, restaurants, taverns, often spending a night at the Tomahawk home there. In 1895, Sherman Merritt was running 4 trains a day out of the Wisconsin and Chippewa Railway Depot by Wisconsin Ave and Railroad Street. That is until Thursday, August 29th of 1895, when the cold feud between Merritt and Donnerstag became very hot again. I will try to lay out the timeline of events as objectively as I can using the testimony from trial witnesses. The earliest chronological testimony comes from Mrs. Bessie Harris. There's a lot more to say about her, but we'll come back to that later. Bessie is described as a friend of the Donnerstag family. She was staying with them at Manson and took a ride down to Tomahawk on the 29th when Lewis and his wife Joanna went to sell fish. Under examination, Bessie said that she saw Lewis bring a revolver and that on the ride down,
he said that if he run across Mr. Merritt and Mr. Merritt should say anything to him, he would shoot him.
A neighbor, Fanny Schiefner, knew of the skirmish 3 years prior.
Mr. Donnerstag come in my place about a week after it and said he was going to run a bullet through Mr. Merritt's brain before he knew it. And he said then they can do with me what they want.
On Thursday the 29th, she saw Lewis arrive to the house sometime after 6 p.m. in a buckboard drawn by one horse, stating,
his wife and the little boy was with him. He had a revolver. I don't know if he pulled it out of his pocket, but I seen him when he stood right about by his wagon and put some bullets in it and put it in his hip pocket.
Another neighbor also testified to seeing Lewis put a revolver in his right-hand hip pocket. The party arrived at Tomahawk around 6 p.m. Bessie heard Lewis issue another threat.
When we were eating our supper in the evening, about 7, we had a pail of beer, and he said he was going to drink some beer, then he was going down to Mr. Heyman's. He was going in there. If Mr. Heyman said anything, he was going to shoot him.
This is in reference to Morris Charles Heyman, a 35-year-old immigrant from Russia, a saloon operator who was serving as the mayor of Tomahawk at the time. Saloonkeeper Charles Johnson testified that he saw Lewis on 2 occasions that evening, both times in his business. The first time was at 7 when Lewis came to buy beer. Quote, I think 10 cents worth. He had a pail, about a half gallon. The second time was about an hour later, shortly after 8. Again, he bought a half gallon of beer. It's worth mentioning at this time, a pail of beer was often just that. Any of a variety of vessels would be brought to a saloon to be filled with 2 quarts of beer, similar to what is now known as a growler. In Lewis's case, it was probably a galvanized pail that he just carried home.
Dang, that's
nice.
Intense.
Swinging. Yeah.
That's called a real Wisconsinite. Nah.
Real Wisconsinite, yeah.
Same thing.
Same thing. Yeah. And healthy. So, when asked what he did with the beer, Lewis said, I drinked it. He shared some with Mrs. Harris and drank the balance himself. The pail he fetched later, he said, he drank alone, along with some whiskey. After that was done, he left to go to Peter Dahl's saloon. Dahl recalled Lewis arriving around 9:30 or 10 o'clock. Lewis drank 4 or 5 beers there and was none too quiet about a particular grievance. According to Dahl,
he makes some kind of threats. He was speaking about fishing and something like that. Then he was saying that Charlie Hyman he made a remark of Charlie Hayman that he does not keep a woman overnight, I guess Mrs. Harris, and that he said if he kept her overnight, that he come and arrest him. And he says so, but if he come and arrest me, I will go and fix Charlie for it.
Yeah, that one's tough to parse, right? So what's happening is that apparently Mayor Heyman had told Donnerstag not to keep a woman who's not his wife overnight. Presumably, Mrs. Bessie Harris, who we heard from a little bit ago, was staying at their home, and we don't know, but it was around town. And this is something that, of course, was criminal back then. Adultery and
I didn't know that. And he's drunk. Real drunk.
he's real drunk.
Yeah, when you say 4 or 5 beers, I'm like, is that pails or
That's
glasses?
more of like a. That's probably just a pint.
Oh,
just 4 or 5 pints.
Oh, okay.
And whiskey.
After a
too.
little bit of whiskey and a pail and a half earlier. So
Classic mix.
Lewis then left Dahl's place around 11 o'clock in the company of a Henry Smith. Now, Henry Smith is clearly the most important witness in this trial. He's the only witness to the actual crime and has no real connection to Donnerstag nor Merritt. Accordingly, his time on the stand comprised almost 1/7 of the trial. So Lewis follows Henry Smith out of Peter Dahl's saloon, and they turn east, walking along the north side of Wisconsin Avenue. They stop shortly thereafter at a saloon belonging to Felix Marcoulier. Felix was a French-Canadian immigrant who'd come to Tomahawk some 6 years prior, along with his brother Philip, who owned a meat market in town. Their descendants are still around the area today. In fact, they come in the library sometimes. Marcoulier recalled the two men drinking 3 or 4 glasses of beer apiece over the course of some 10 or 15 minutes. They left, turning east again, as if headed towards Lewis's home. 5 or 10 minutes after they left, Marcoulier heard a quick succession of gunshots. Another 5 or 10 minutes later, after wails outside grew louder and closer, the door of Marcoulier's saloon burst open, and a bloody Sherman Merritt threw himself inside, crying, "Oh, I'm shot! Help!" before collapsing onto the floor. Marcoulier testified,
He was crying. The first words he said, he looked to be in pain, pretty badly hurt. He was swearing. He dropped himself down on his knee. He dropped himself down on his knee in the middle of the floor, and he fell flat on the floor.
That is what he said.
That's good. That's really good.
A Merrill man named C.J. Brazy was in Tomahawk with his wife that evening. Brazy was a veteran of the Civil War, though he proved difficult to track down precisely. They heard the ruckus from a block away. He said, "We heard a man coming down swiftly on a halfway run, then his steps were slow, and as he passed directly opposite, a little past us, there was an open place, a saloon proved to be. He went in, but before he reached the door, 'Oh, I'm shot, help, help.' I says to my wife, 'You go east a little ways and stop, and I'll go across and see whether I can do anything for him.' Brazy found a man he didn't recognize, bleeding from his head and below his right shoulder. There were only a few people there in the saloon. Brazy asked the bleeding man, 'Who did this?' 'Donnerstag,' was the reply. Brazy ran to City Hall and found Mayor Heyman. They headed back to Marcoulier's, but the mayor turned off to find the chief of police. Brazy returned to the bleeding man. I says, 'We've got to stop this bleeding at any rate, and see how bad you are.' He turned towards me in this manner. 'Are you a doctor?' 'No, sir, but I've helped to dress a good many wounds in the army.' Eventually doctors arrived. Doctors John W. Bird and J.D. Cutter helped stop the bleeding before moving him from the saloon to a more appropriate spot. The next published issue of newspapers all over the state included the following dispatch from Tomahawk, August 30th.
Oh, can I do a transatlantic accent? Is that appropriate
Please
for
do.
this?
Please do it.
All right, I'm going to try it. At 11:30 o'clock last night, as S.A. Merritt, a conductor on the Wisconsin and Chippewa Railway, was leaving his home in the northern part of the city to make the midnight train on the Sioux Road, he was waylaid on Wisconsin Avenue, not 15 rods from his home, by a man. Merritt endeavored to get away, whereupon the man shot him in the right breast. The bullet lodging in the right shoulder, he next aimed the revolver at Merritt's head, but by ducking, saved his life. The bullet striking the top of his head and making an ugly furrow across it. The man then fled, and Merritt succeeded in reaching a saloon, where his wounds were dressed. He may recover. The police know the assailant and are searching the woods for him.
Fantastic.
I tried. That felt right.
Merritt did recover. Most of the witness testimony in this trial served to set the time and location of Louis Donnerstag. This ended up being largely unhelpful because Louis never contested that he pulled the trigger. Rather, his counsel argued that he fired in self-defense. Henry Smith, we remember him, he left the bar with him,
Yes.
and he was along on their walk eastward. Henry Smith stands out as the one person close enough to see some of the actual altercation. Parsing the testimony of Donnerstag, Merritt, and Smith, what we can assume occurred is something like this. While headed east, Louis talked to Smith about playing music for a dance. Between 5th and 6th Streets, the two approached Sherman Merritt, who was headed west towards the depot. The three men were all in line for a moment as they walked past one another. Moments later, Henry Smith saw out of his periphery Louis doubling back. Now, according to Merritt,
Donnerstag struck me as he passed me, and he turned and followed me and struck me, going after me. Just as I passed him, he struck me and also turned and faced me. He struck me and I struck him, and he pulled his revolver and fired a shot at me.
Louis remembered it differently. Well, I walked the sidewalk along home, and I was pretty drunk, and I go crooked on the sidewalk. I tumbled a little from the one side to another, and I stumbled on a man. And then I had my hand on the coat pocket like this. I tumbled on a man, and this man struck me 3 or 4 times so fast as he could on my head. And after that, I turned around and said, "What you struck me for? I don't do you anything." Then he said, "I will fix you, son of a bitch." And after that, I backed up 3 or 4 steps, and I pulled the revolver out of the pocket, and I say, "You leave me alone, I shoot." Then I shot one off right in the sky, lifted the revolver up and shot one off up to the sky, and he come again like a tiger to me and struck me, both arms out, and he said, "I will kill you, son of a bitch, right here," and pounded me again. And after that I had the revolver in my hand, and I had this finger, and he kept on pounding me all the time, and I watched him. I thought he had a knife or something. He would hit me, and I watched his hand. Henry Smith admits to not seeing everything, but said, Mr. Donnerstag went past Merritt about 5 feet, and he turned around and went for him. Smith added that Donnerstag, quote, jumped on Mr. Merritt. He said something, but I didn't understand what. It was kind of a growl. He turned around and backed apart from him a little ways, and turned around, and then he commenced to shoot. Smith's story seems to be a closer match to Merritt's. Merritt said that he grabbed Louis in a bear hug after the first shot missed, trying to ward off the gun. The second shot went through Merritt's hat and grazed his scalp. Shot number 3 left a hole in Merritt's clothes, but missed his person, as did the 4th shot. Finally, on the 5th shot, Donnerstag hit Merritt under the right shoulder. All 5 shots were made in a span of about 6 seconds, said Smith. At this point, Smith turned tail and ran from the gunfire. Louis, having hit his mark and now left holding a smoking gun depleted of ammo, also took off, running north in the dark. Louis claims to have run north toward Manson, running through the woods maybe 5 miles. At that point, he lay down to sleep, and at daybreak continued. The home on Manson Lake would have been about 8 miles from the point of the altercation, taking the 4th Street Bridge north out of Tomahawk and then making a beeline for Manson through the woods. I don't know, I find that hard to believe, but it seems to be what happened.
Find what hard to believe.
No, just a 8-mile run for this 50-year-old man who's been drinking through the wilderness at night.
You'd be surprised what drunk people can do.
Also, the adrenaline of shooting a man.
Right.
Sure.
Like, you don't know what
Running
you're
for his
thinking.
life.
He's all amped up, yeah. Now, Constable Joseph Linden, a former police officer, went first to Donnerstag's Tomahawk residence. Not finding him there, he and Police Chief Edward Houlihan got on a velocipede and took it north, probably to Hayford Junction, then made it to Manson Lake on foot. Velocipede?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, it's kind of a bicycle. It had an extra wheel that spanned the railroad ties, so it had like wheels on both rails.
Yeah, I can
And
picture it.
you pedal it and yeah, velocipede.
That's really cool.
Does that sound fun?
Bring those back.
I know that Frank Robbins, who was one of the lumber magnates in the area, was very opposed to velocipedes. He's like, oh, these damn kids and their velocipedes on my rail, they're going to get hurt and it's going to be trouble for him, I guess. Which is also kind of funny to imagine. There's kids riding bikes on rails.
The word velocipede is
Velocipede.
perfect.
The police took the velocipede north, made it to Manson Lake on foot. They arrived around 3:20 in the morning of Friday, August 30th. The first time they saw Lewis was around 9 a.m., and they saw him outside the house, shotgun in hand.
Mhm.
Constable Linden snuck down to the building where Mrs. Harris was staying, a building next to the Mansons, the Donnerstags' main shanty, I guess. He told Mrs. Harris to have Lewis come to her building for supper at noon, and then Linden went into the woods and waited. Anna, the youngest of the Donnerstag children, went to Mrs. Harris's house. Mrs. Harris told the girl to tell her father that he could come to her house for supper. The structure was some 30 feet from the Donnerstag home, and at noon Lewis walked over unarmed. Once inside, Joseph Linden made to arrest Lewis for attempted murder. So they cuffed him, and while walking back to the road, which I should mention, I did try to drive out to their property, and the roads are bad today, and I really kind of screwed up my car. Like right over the crest of a hill was just a massive ravine, just washed out from it. It was not worth it considering I couldn't access their property anyway. But point being, they've got him, and now they've got a good hike to get back to the road, where they still are hoofing it back to Hayford Junction to the station to get on their little bikes again. And so walking back to the road with Lewis apprehended, Linden and Houlihan came across 13-year-old Hugo. He's posted on top of a hill in the woods facing the road with a rifle in hand. He set down the weapon and let them by without issue. We're left to imagine that Lewis had sent young Hugo as sentry over the hill, either to look out for officers coming by the road and alert the family, or to simply shoot them. Now, before we get to the verdict, there are a few things that I think should be addressed from court testimony. There were wildly differing stories as to what transpired in the dust-up 3 years prior. Merritt's involves him going to the Donnerstag house, knocking on the door, and being immediately walloped for the sin of politely and timidly asking if the children could refrain from throwing rocks at his house. On the other hand, Lewis, Rudolph, and Hannah say Merritt stomped up to the Donnerstag door at mealtime, shouting something about, "You Dutch son of a bitch." Does that pertain to this trial? Not really. But it does lend credence to the defense's suggestion that Merritt had resolved to drive the Donnerstags out of the city. Under cross-examination, Merritt denied saying anything about the kind of citizens Tomahawk has, and denied that he had ever tried to drive Donnerstag out of the city. On redirect examination, Merritt was asked, "What did you say, if anything, with reference to driving Mr. Donnerstag out of the city?"
I never said I would drive him out of the city. I merely stated, I says, now you see what kind of people we have in our neighborhood.
Later, though, Tomahawk resident and defense witness John Gilman, who was present in Marcoulier's saloon when Merritt collapsed on the floor, was asked if he heard Merritt make any statement with regard to Donnerstag that night.
He said, "Gentlemen, you see what kind of characters we have here in town. I have done my best to get them out for the last year, and you can see what I have got for it. Something, as near as I can word it. They are probably not the exact words, as near as I can recollect."
Hayford Junction resident William B. Cotter, also present at Marcoulier's that night, was asked the same. "Well, he said, you see, that is the kind of people we have in Tomahawk. He says, I've been trying for years to drive this man out of town, and this is what I've got. I don't know as that is right exactly the words." Merritt agreed that he had complained about, quote, the kind of place that Donnerstag kept, saying,
I complained about keeping a lady there, Mrs. Harris.
Now we have to mention Mrs. Harris, too. Remember that Bessie Harris is the woman who came down from Manson with Lewis and Joanna? She testified to hearing Lewis threaten Mr. Heyman. She was lightly grilled on Cross-X about her personal life.
Are you a married woman?
Yes, I am a married woman.
Do you live with your husband?
No, sir.
You live alone, do you?
Yes, sir.
How do you make your living?
I work out.
I don't know what is meant by workout in this context.
Right.
Work outside? Work.
Landscaping? Yeah.
Gardening?
Yeah.
Gardening, maybe?
I'm thinking it's outside of the home.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, yeah, unfamiliar with this euphemism. I guess it's intentionally vague and meaningless. An objection to the question was upheld as being immaterial to the case, regardless. The defense attorney went on to suggest that there was a disagreement with Joanna Donnerstag that night.
Mrs. Donnerstag refused to let you into the house, didn't she?
No, sir.
Didn't you come there with a man named Bill Donnell and wanted to stay all night and she wouldn't let you stay there?
No, sir.
Merritt had previously complained to a judge, the mayor, and the constable about Donnerstag keeping a woman, Mrs. Harris, overnight. Merritt was asked why he made that complaint, but an objection to its relevance was sustained. A final effort by the defense was made late in the trial when Mayor Heyman was brought back to the stand once more. Do you know what Mrs. Harris does for a living up there in Tomahawk? Objected to as immaterial. Sustained. Do you know what her reputation is in that city with reference to being a prostitute? Objection. Immaterial. Again sustained. No further questions. The defense wanted to paint Mrs. Harris as untrustworthy. The attorney saw that he was not going to get a witness to directly state that she was a sex worker, so he went ahead and stated it himself for the jury.
So, Bessie Harris was a sex worker.
And we just don't know. She had that reputation. I would guess so.
It's the oldest occupation.
It is also of note that she is married but does not live with her husband. Again, another thing, you don't know what it means, but it is interesting and it
Very scandalous.
pretty scandalous.
Yeah.
And again, yes, sex work was illegal at this time, but so was adultery. That was a crime that would land you in jail. So yeah, extra scandalous, I guess. Also of note, to move on here, also of note, a story I skipped entirely so far, a story of another encounter with Merritt, witnessed only by Lewis and Rudolph. The previous spring, shortly after the snow had gone, Lewis and Rudolph say they were accosted and chased by Merritt. This is Lewis's account. I go early in the morning to fishing, to the river. Then I met him between the depot and the coal shed there, where the engine load the coal there, and he come. I met him there, then he see me. He says, I have got you, son of a bitch, here. Then I run away, and behind my big boy coming, and he hollered after him. Then he go back and leave me alone. I also didn't mention, Lewis, at the start of his testimony, requested a translator because he's not very good at English, and that was denied. They said, you can speak perfectly well. Arguable. It could have helped him get his point across at times, I think. Rudolph said that he and his father were walking down to the river in the early morning. Rudolph some short distance behind, and Merritt appeared going the other way from the depot towards home.
He says, here I have got the son of a bitch. Let me start over.
That's Russian.
He says, here I've got this son of a... That is still Russian?
It's still Russian.
Here. He says, here I have got the son of a bitch that I was looking for a long time ago. Then he started for my father, and my father run. Merritt run after him a little ways, and I hollered, and I says, hey, what are you doing? Then he turned back and walked off.
And that is Rudolph.
Probably.
That's pretty close.
But it was spot on, frankly.
I think
That was good.
it was very good. I liked it. Thank you. Merritt dismissed the story, saying he doesn't walk that way home, sticking to Selma Ave. It's not a great defense there, but personally, I see no real reason to believe this story. They claim no witnesses but themselves, Rudolph and Lewis, and it seems a pretty convenient addition to the narrative of Merritt having it out for Donnerstag, which I do not doubt, but this sounds fishy to me. In addition, some hay was made of Lewis's level of intoxication and whether he was visibly drunk and, therefore, capable of making the conscious decision to shoot and kill Merritt. This was less about the verdict than it was about the sentence if found guilty. Overall, I find there to be reasonable evidence that Merritt, possibly with other city bigwigs, did in fact conspire to run this destitute German family with the squirrely kids out of Tomahawk. On the other hand, I believe that Lewis went to Tomahawk that day with a gun with the express purpose of using it on Sherman Merritt or Mayor Heyman if given the chance. Now, back in the courtroom, Judge Charles V. Bardeen charged the jury with a decision between 4 verdicts. 1, if they found that the defendant made a conscious decision to assault Merritt to take his life, then the defendant must be found guilty of assault with intent to kill. 2, a defense was made as to the defendant's level of intoxication. That means that he could have attacked Merritt without a preconceived notion of killing him, but still made an attempt on Merritt's life and so is guilty. 3, alternatively, the defendant could have been so intoxicated as to not have been capable of forming the intent to kill. Then he should be acquitted of the intent to kill and find him guilty of assault and battery only. And 4, if they found reasonable doubt of the defendant's guilt or of the offense of assault and battery, then the verdict must not be guilty. From the Merrill Star Advocate, Tuesday, October 1st, 1895.
Louis Donnerstag was convicted in the circuit court here last week with assault with intent to kill conductor Merritt of the Wisconsin and Chippewa Railroad and sentenced to 6 years at hard labor in Waupun.
So Lewis was sent to Waupun State Penitentiary. I managed to track down records related to Lewis's time in prison, thanks largely to the good folks at the Wisconsin Historical Society's archives. The 87 existing pages are mostly preliminary paperwork and court formalities. There was also a sheath of information pertaining to the Donnerstag family's attempt to get Lewis a pardon from the governor. A letter was typed and addressed to His Excellency the Governor, saying that prior to his conviction, Lewis was, quote, a peaceful and law-abiding citizen, that he has a family consisting of a wife and 7 minor children in indigent circumstances depending upon his services for a livelihood and who are suffering by reason of his incarceration, that believing in all the premises and his previous and subsequent good behavior, public justice would not be perverted were he to receive clemency at your hand, and that he has suffered commensurate with the crime for which he was convicted. We pray that he may receive a pardon or a commutation of sentence so that he may provide for his said family and regain the reputation he has forfeited. This letter was furnished with over 100 signatures to Wisconsin Governor Edward Schofield. Also included was a handwritten letter, Joanna's personal plea, including some information that was not shown in the trial. She says that the first fight 3 years before the shooting began with Merritt abusing the Donnerstag children. She mentions the fact that 2 doctors were present in Marcoulier's and only one was allowed to testify. The other one, Dr. Cutter, she says, was told by Merritt that Merritt had struck the first blow in their altercation. Henry Smith, she claims, lied in court. After the shooting, he did not go find an officer. Rather, he first went to her house and said, quote, if I would let him sleep with me, Donnerstag would get clear. If not, he would go to Waupun. The third witness, Mrs. Harris, Joanna writes, should not have been taken as she is of very low character and of ill repute. She would swear to anything for a half pint of whiskey. She claims to have a witness who saw Merritt take a bunch of keys from his pocket and use one to open the door at the Donnerstag house and turn the place upside down, leaving it in poor condition. Merritt was lightly wounded and was back at work 2 weeks after Lewis was sentenced. Her final plea is that she was left with 6 small children, and the oldest, Rudolph, being in poor health, could only do very little to help support the family. The witness to Merritt's supposed break-in included an affidavit in support of the claim, also supporting an effort including Constable Houlihan to remove the Donnerstags and Mrs. Harris from that house. This was a pretty lengthy letter. I don't know. What do we think about that?
Well, I mean, it's a good shot, right? Might as well write something like that. doubt its veracity, but sounded nice.
It's so nice.
I feel like there's information that would have been pertinent to use during the trial.
Yeah. And I think that's her thing when she says Dr. Cutter was not allowed to testify, that and who knows the real reason Dr. Cutter didn't testify. It is interesting that only one of the two doctors there
Sure.
testified. Yeah, it's.
Well, and it's also interesting that she brought up that Merritt was abusing their kids. Why wasn't that also brought up?
That should have come up.
Like,
yeah.
that's definitely.
If it was true, it should have come
Yeah.
up.
Oh, right. So there's that question.
And if that was true, though, why wasn't the police department notified at the time when it happened?
Right. And in some ways, it sounds like Merritt had the ear of the mayor and police. So I would think that he told them at the time that Donnerstag's kids were throwing rocks and they kicked my ass. But on the other hand, he was definitely kind of the aggressor in that situation. He did go onto their property through their gates. So talking in circles, but no, Joanna's letter has some interesting information. Getting the constable to support her argument that people were involved is in trying to find evidence to kick them out of their house. That's interesting, but again, it's just a letter and it's a few years late. Lewis also wrote a letter in which he disparaged the testimony of Henry Smith, which interestingly, he referred to him as Heinrich Schmidt. Henry Smith must be, he was probably German too, I'm not sure. Mrs. Harris disparaged the testimony of Smith, Mrs. Harris, and Mrs. Schiefner. Also notably, he seems to refer to Merritt as Wart throughout, as in, the said Wart had no provocation to attack me.
Good put down. I'll send that back. You're
Wart. I don't know if you put that on your formal plea for a pardon, but the collection of pardon documents includes a letter from the judge in the trial, Charles Bardeen, addressed in 1896 to Governor W.H. Upham, writing, I want to enter my most earnest protest against the exercise of clemency in Louis Donnerstag's behalf. I have known this man for a number of years. He's been in a number of rows, and in almost every instance has been the aggressor. The offense for which he was committed to prison was without provocation, and showed a most cold-blooded disposition, and it was only by good luck that it was not murder instead of assault with intent to commit. It is true that his family are destitute, but at the same time, I never have sent a man to prison whom I thought deserved imprisonment more than this man. I took his family affairs into consideration when the sentence was imposed, and made the sentence lighter than I otherwise would have done. There's absolutely no reason aside from the hardship that it is to his family that he should be pardoned. I don't know whether it's common for a judge to write a letter such as that to a governor in opposition to a pardon. Maybe it is. I know that a Tomahawk man named Fred Schultz in 1899 wrote a letter to the governor in support of Lewis, and also made some manner of appeal to Judge Bardeen. Bardeen replied that a pardon was not probable without some new evidence coming to light. He also wrote that if the governor were to ask Bardeen his opinion on the matter, he would be forced to give his thoughts, continuing, however, to say that he will not feel compelled to intrude in the matter without such prompting, although in 1896 he had done just that. When Lewis went to prison, the children were approximately 20, 15, 13, 10, 8, 6, and 4 years old. He was released from prison on December 23, 1899, missing his eldest daughter's wedding by about 6 months. Hannah married Fred Schultz in June 1899, not long after he wrote the letter on behalf of Lewis.
Interesting, yeah.
Which is interesting. It sounds like a church in the area offered a great deal of assistance to the family during Lewis's imprisonment, and everyone made it through all right. They survived. Not a lot is known of their circumstances in that time beyond that. Let's talk about Sherman Merritt for a second. What do we think of this character?
I mean, when you compare the two people, you got one of eagle repute in Rudolph, and you have one who is an upstanding citizen for the most part, who is a leader of this railroad. And we had the characterizations of him as being a bad guy just from the Donnerstags. So I think he was just like an uppity neighbor who was probably,
Right, yeah.
he has his connections, and maybe he kicks the Donnerstags out through his ways, but that doesn't mean Rudolph should go shoot him in the chest.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I agree. In a lot of ways, I want to say he was kind of a jerk.
Yeah.
Um,
I would agree with that.
like, oh, maybe, yeah, a busybody, maybe, just going out of his way as a neighbor to cause unpleasantness for someone. But
Sure.
Who's probably causing him a lot of unpleasantness first.
also probably true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it doesn't seem like he's done anything illegal, and he was just on his way to work that night. So, Sherman Merritt, I mentioned early on that he married Olive May Wallace in 1890. I didn't mention that in 1891 they had a daughter named Ruth. I've not been able to find anything concrete, but she seems to have passed between 1891 and 1895 based on the 1895 Wisconsin State Census. Of course, all of the altercations with Donnerstag happened in that period of time between 1891 and 95. So Merritt had that going on at home. The 1910 U.S. Census shows him in Rolling Green, Minnesota, indicating that he and his wife had had another child who did not survive. And a 1912 obituary in the Martin County, Minnesota Independent reads as follows. Mrs. Olive Merritt, wife of Sherman Merritt of Rolling Green, died Saturday, March 16th, her death being due to complications following childbirth. The child whose birth cost the mother her life, passing away a short time after its birth.
Breaking.
Yeah.
It is pretty sad. And, he would remarry in 1918, and by all accounts, he and Ellen Merritt, née Sharp, lived happily together until he passed in 1942 at age 81. And that's how we're ending. So we'll pick 1902 with the Donnerstag family after the next episode. First, we'll go over a little background and talk about historical research and its limitations. So, what do we think?
Did Hugo, or not Hugo, did Rudolph Donnerstag do it?
And Rudolph Sr., right?
Yes.
Yeah, he did it.
Go down your mind.
I kind of have a crazy take.
Okay.
I kind of believe him in the fact that he was drunk. I mean, I think both sides might be true, but I don't know. I just think that he probably was drunk and he perceived it as an attack, and Merritt thought it was, I don't know. I kind of am rooting for him.
Yeah, but earlier he's saying to barkeeps, I'm going to shoot this guy.
Right. But I mean, you talk smack in a bar and this guy's harassing you just for living in the neighborhood. I don't know. I'm supporting the underdog here.
As far as that goes, I tend to be with you, Lily, supporting the underdog. And I've spent enough time reading and rereading these transcripts to, I want him to win.
Right.
He never does. He goes to jail every time. But,
and I feel like, and you had mentioned earlier, like he was denied a translator in court. So I feel like, maybe there's some aspect of being misunderstood.
And also, along with that, some aspect of being put at a disadvantage, perhaps.
Exactly.
By the powers that be in Little Tomahawk.
Because Merritt seems like the most well-connected guy
Exactly.
in the city.
So I feel like there was a lot against him.
However, I'm sure he was loaded off his mind, and
I didn't say he wasn't. I think he was, but I just think, there's a lot of different perspectives.
You have empathy for him, whether he did it or not.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want my 2 cents?
Please.
I see Merritt as the old man that stands on his front porch going, "Get off my lawn,
Yes.
you darn kids."
Yes.
How far he took that, who knows? It was a long time ago. But then Donnerstag, to me, I have to disagree with Lily. I'm sorry.
That's fair.
To me, this seems like premeditated. He had the gun. He knew he was going out drinking. He verbally stated what he planned on doing. So I think he got what was coming to him. I mean, too bad for his wife and children, but if you're going to shoot somebody or try to murder somebody, you need to go to prison.
Yeah.
He's the kind of guy who would set up his 13-year-old with a rifle to potentially shoot a
Which
cop.
is probably the
Please.
hill that you drove over and
That's the one that did it.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
So stupid. Another little bit of testimony that I didn't include is that he claimed to have brought the gun because one of the neighbors had a dog that always attacked him when he came by with fish.
Interesting.
He said, last time I was here a week before, the dog bit me, and I think they asked if he had marks from the bite, and he's like, well, no, I'm tough.
Okay.
So
no evidence of a bite.
no evidence of a bite.
I think Lily just likes a bad boy.
What? Okay. That's a bold claim to make. I have empathy, Dan.
Empathy. So, I don't know. I guess he went to jail, and Merritt might be a jerk, and he had a really sad life. So maybe,
Yeah, maybe he was just taking it out on
yeah,
Yeah.
Donnerstag.
yeah. Lewis should have just said, "Sherm, is this about me or is this about your daughter?"
Sherm. I like that.
It's a little
Like,
harsh.
are you projecting because I have all these kids?
I
Oh
think
my
you are
gosh, and I can't have
projecting.
one.
Yeah. Oh, not our
All
analysis of
these
him.
kids.
Ooh,
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we're
If he would have been nice, though, he could have spent time with the children.
exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, I think
But
we're
he wanted his
we're
own.
getting to the root of this. This is great.
Too bitter.
Yeah, very bitter.
Well, then I guess we'll wrap it up there. So, thanks again, all of you, for doing this with me. Next week, I'll talk with some different friends as we continue with Chapter 3. This has been If These Woods Could Talk, a production of the Rhinelander District Library. Follow us on Facebook for more Northwoods history, as well as on Instagram, YouTube, and most podcast platforms.
Dun, dun, dun.